afternoon, everybody, and thanks for being here. I'm Sean Mannix, the Chief of Police of Cedar Park. It's Seammannix. We're here to give you further information on the senseless and cowardly actions of a group of armed robbers who took the life of an outstanding young man, Austin Burroughs, in Cedar Park on the 20th of this month. It should be noted that Austin was an active duty Air Force airman with a promising career ahead of him. His life was taken by a group that appears to have gone out with the sole purpose of robbing people at gunpoint that night. So some of the details are on 1:20 at about 9:18 p.m. We responded to a shots fired call at 2201 South Lakeline. When the officers arrived, they found Austin Burroughs with a severe wound that was later determined to be a gunshot wound to the neck. Immediate life-saving measures were begun by the police officers. However, unfortunately, at 9:30, Austin was pronounced dead at the scene. On 1:22, video surveillance was obtained from a nearby business of a white four-door vehicle driving through the area of the parking lot. And from the video, a few minutes later, that same vehicle was seen rapidly exiting the parking lot. That same day, we received information from a Leander police detective working with the U.S. Marshals Lone Star Fugitive Task Force regarding a vehicle that he had located during the course of the investigation that matched the description of the vehicle seen fleeing the scene. The vehicle was identified as being registered to Ilana Wilkes, who's on the board over here, and had a previous history of being connected to aggravated robberies. We began an immediate surveillance and tracking operation in furtherance of the investigation. During the course of the investigation, we learned of two robberies that occurred in Austin on the same evening that Austin Burroughs lost his life. We developed evidence and ultimately self-admissions that Ilana Wilkes, Darius Burdett Hornsby, and Cornelius Martin set out that evening to allegedly commit a series of aggravated robberies while using a handgun. We learned of at least two robberies allegedly connected to these individuals prior to their arrival in Cedar Park that night, where Austin Burroughs was ultimately killed at 2201 South Lakeline. On the 24th, the Lone Star Fugitive Task Force conducted a traffic stop in Killeen and took both Ilana and Cornelius into custody for warrants. The following day, that same U.S. Marshals Lone Star Fugitive Task Force stopped Darius and arrested him on warrants. After working closely with our district attorney's office, all three have now been charged with murder in Williamson County. It should be noted that since the trigger was pulled until all three were in custody, this was an around-the-clock operation that involved the full force of the law enforcement community in Central Texas. We owed this to the Burroughs family, his associates, and this community. I'm joined by our district attorney, Sean Dick, from the Williamson County District Attorney's Office, Supervisory Deputy U.S. Marshal Darren Sarton of the Lone Star Fugitive Task Force, Texas Ranger Veronica Gideon, who was an instrumental part of the investigation, and we also worked very closely with APD's robbery unit. Now that's the prepared comments that I have, and I will be answering the questions that you may have, but I will apologize in advance that I will be light on details as it relates to investigative techniques, technologies leveraged and those kinds of things, because here's one thing we know about murder investigations when homicides occur. They're extremely complex. There's a great deal of investigation that takes place post-arrest. We will be waiting for things like forensic evidence to be examined, other witnesses that may need to be interviewed, people that need to be re-interviewed, and various other investigative steps. So those are the details that I can release as we know them right now. And if there's any questions you might have, I'm willing to answer them at this point.
Chief, what do we know about those two other robberies? Were people injured in those robberies? Where did they happen exactly? Did they successfully take what kind of items?
I will say that those robberies were both committed at gunpoint. There was no injury associated with it, but beyond that, I will defer any questions to the Austin robberies to the Austin Police Department, as those are ongoing investigations.
How important was it to have that regional cooperation and focus to track these suspects down as they cross jurisdictional boundaries?
I'm sorry, what was that?
How important was it to have that regional focus with the crossing of jurisdictional boundaries?
Extremely important, and that's something that when you look at Central Texas, it's kind of like the jewel of law enforcement from the standpoint of the relationships that have been developed in this part of the state, in this part of the country, is we don't work in a vacuum. There's a tremendous amount of resources that we are able to pull in by working with our federal and state partners, as well as district attorneys in two different counties, both Williamson and Travis.
Was anything stolen from Burroughs?
I'm not going to speak to any part of the investigation that may still be part of re-interviewing the folks that are in custody. So I will defer. I'll defer much of what we will ultimately know to public disclosure from the witness stand.
Okay. One other question. Is there any other information you could release about Burroughs? You know, was he from Cedar Park or his family? Or?
He was in the Air Force. My understanding is he was between duty stations and was to be deployed to Monterey as his next duty station. Beyond that, I'm not that deeply educated in the background and history.
Is it still true to say he was just approached by one man who shot him? Or like the initial report came out? Or?
Again, I will say that 3 people were acting in concert according to the evidence that we've obtained at this point, but the details of the encounter will be reserved for public disclosure from the witness stand.
Will there be any additional charges filed on these 3 individuals because the other 2 robberies did happen at gunpoint?
The other 2 robberies, again, are subject to the investigation of the Austin Police Department, and whatever charges get filed by them is ultimately up to the Austin Police Department based on the evidence that they collect in those particular investigations. I've visited personally with our district attorney, and right now murder is the appropriate charge for all 3. However, that is subject to review in the event that it becomes a capital murder case, but it's too early to know that from the details that we have right now.
Do you know how long they've been operating this armed robbery ring?
It appears for some time, at least one of the individuals involved was actually arrested on an aggravated robbery warrant prior to the murder charge being applied. But again, I would have to defer back to the investigating agency for any details on the longevity of those cases or what else they may be connected to.
Do you suspect other people apart from these 3 suspects were involved in this ring?
We believe and are actually confident by the information that we have right now that it was 3 people and 3 people only that were acting together. That could change if upon re-interview or other witnesses more information is found. But at this point, it appears that the 3 people that are in custody are the 3 people that were working together that night.
Chief, why did they come to this apartment complex here in Cedar Park? Did they come here to commit armed robberies before, or was it one of those they just came by, saw, we understand the gates were broken, so did they just see an open gate and go in?
You know, I can't speak to the exact why they picked where they picked. I can tell you that it is not a dangerous part of Cedar Park, and it is not, one where we're having any chronic, problems or anything. So I don't think it was picked because of its, history of any criminal activity or anything like that.
Have you been in touch with his family, his wife was there? If so, how are they doing? Can you talk to us a little bit about how they're handling all this?
Our executive staff, victim services, and investigators have been closely in contact with the family on several occasions. And, I don't think I'm equipped to be the one to talk about, their feelings and, how they're coping. I can just say that I'm proud of the collective effort that is helping to honor Austin's memory by bringing those believed to be responsible to the justice system.
Chief, could these three individuals be linked to any other armed robbery cases in this area or in the Austin area?
That would be a question for any other agency that may be investigating robberies in their jurisdiction. We have no reason to believe that they're connected to any other robbery in Cedar Park.
Are they based out of Austin, or where were they?
They have operated in and about the area. As far as being based goes, I can't speak intelligently to that question.
Last few questions, guys. Cedar Park has seen a lot of growth in recent years. Do you think there's any correlation between that growth and violent crimes?
Well, I think anytime you have a rise in population, there's going to be an incremental change in criminal patterns. Cedar Park still has an extremely low violent crime rate. It is an uncharacteristic crime for this city, that's for sure. In the 6 years that I've been here, this is the first whodunit, felony being committed that has been advanced to the taking of a life of a human being. So no, we're not seeing any kind of patterns or anything like that. But you have to remember, not just Cedar Park, but Williamson County as a whole is part of a vibrant metroplex area. And criminals don't know city lines. They don't. They do not respect some line on the map when they're out looking to do the things that they do.
Do we know where the suspects were living? They were residents of what jurisdiction?
We do, and I did not, prepare for exact addresses for that. I believe they were Austin addresses. Is that correct? So, as far as the living arrangements.
Can you say what you meant by this is the first whodunit felony being committed that has advanced to murder? What?
Well, we have had murder cases in Cedar Park in 2018. We had a brother kill his brother and niece. It was a family-related thing. Several years before that, I believe it was in 15, was the Katie Eager murder, and that was a live-in relationship, a domestic relationship. We haven't seen one like this where it is a felony being committed on a person that doesn't know the other person, leading to the death of that victim.
And those other two robberies happened the same night as the death of Mr. Burrows?
Yes.
Can you tell us which one of the three suspects actually pulled the trigger?
Again, we have a lot of information that I will not be sharing today because that is, I think, best first publicly disclosed to the folks that may be hearing this case in the form of a jury.
All right, last question. Are they in Williamson County Jail, you said?
They're in the Travis County Jail awaiting transfer to the Williamson County Jail.
And I guess just one last question. When this happens to you, whenever you're a victim of people who come aggressively at you on gunpoint, we don't know if he tried to fight back or whatnot. He did have training. But what do you do in that circumstance to, I guess, better your chances to get out of that situation alive?
Given the fact that we're talking about an individual case, involving a young man that was just laid to rest yesterday. I'm going to save that conversation for another time as far as talking about, crime, prevention tips and those kinds of things, just to stay focused on him and his memory.